of my charge is leave nothing undone. Now, we're obviously all going to the conference, and it's a perfect time to be noticed by people. It's a perfect time to show yourself off as a leader, a great preacher. Maybe you want to be that person in the Bible study who makes the person cry, get to their heart. Is that what a conference is for? No. And sisters, what do you want to be known for when you go to this conference? I really want to take you through one of my favorite characters in the Bible. His name is Joshua. And just the way that he was known by God for something that actually no one really wants to be known for. So if we start in Joshua 1, verse 1, you don't have to go there, but it says, after the death of Moses, the servant of the Lord said to Joshua, son of Nun, Moses' aide, Moses, my servant, is dead. Now then, you and all these people get ready to cross the Jordan River into the land I'm about to give them. And so we see that Joshua was probably known for great preaching. He was probably maybe athletic, maybe very intelligent. He probably had many attributes to himself. But what got him noticed by God was that he was Moses' aide. In other words, a servant. And that's what I want to speak about for the conference. Now, Joshua was called by God to help lead all of these people who had been taken from slavery in Egypt to the promised land. Now, you may think, okay, they made it to the promised land, a land flowing of milk and honey, and they probably relaxed, right? They probably, took off their jackets, got some sun, like you all want to do in Barcelona. But no, that's not the case. And I think, sisters, we've got to see Barcelona not as a holiday, but actually a time to serve. Barcelona is a land of horchata and empanadas, but there's lots to be done. In Joshua 11, if you all turn there, verse 15, it says, as the Lord commanded his servant Moses, so Moses commanded Joshua, and Joshua did it. He left nothing undone of all that the Lord commanded Moses. And so we see that Joshua was known for leaving nothing undone. And sisters, does that describe your servitude? If you're taking care of the children, it's funny. To leave something undone means to put aside, to fail to show proper care for, and to reject. Sisters, if you've been called to babysit, please don't do this. Don't fail to show proper care to poor Finn and the other kids. But this is for all of the different types of servitude. Maybe you're good at cyber. Don't reject it, right? It also means to destroy it. And so I want to make this practical for you, sisters. If you're serving in cyber or you're serving decorations, get in touch with the people who lead these, maybe the cyber evangelist. Find out what it is that you can do to help. And you may say, Amelia, I don't serve in any capacity right now. What shall I do? And in the story of Abigail, you don't have to turn there, but my favorite character, in 1 Samuel 25, Abigail, for those of you who don't know the story, Abigail was the wife of a very foolish man who was very mean, and his name literally meant fool. And he had rejected David, and David was like, right, I'm just going to have to kill you and your household, right? And so the servant told Abigail, okay, David is about to kill your household and your servants. You need to do something. And in verse 18, it says, Abigail acted quickly. It says that it then goes on to say that she met David before David came to her home. So what do we see about Abigail? She turned up early. And so sisters, if you don't know how to serve, if you don't know where to serve, just show up early. You guys, sometimes we turn up to the banquet and we're like, wow, look at the decoration, look at the food. Oh, it just must have just appeared. No, if you come early, you'll see what needs doing. And so that is my practical for you sisters, is to arrive early for at least one session and leave nothing undone. To God be all the glory.
Well, it's an honor to get to preach to the women. Thank you so much, honey, for this opportunity. And the title of my charge is How to Set Boundaries. So let's turn our Bibles to Isaiah 59. And this is a topic that's very dear to my heart because I did not have any boundaries whatsoever prior to God. No boundaries with men, no boundaries with my health, no boundaries with drugs and alcohol and smoking. Literally no boundaries. And that made my life very, very chaotic. So I really had to learn boundaries as a baby disciple. And I really see the protection behind boundaries. But I had zero boundaries whatsoever. But it's important we have boundaries, sisters, especially in our dating relationships, amen? But what's amazing is how God physically made us with boundaries, that being our skin. Our skin is a boundary. It's a boundary from too many germs entering our body to protect us from getting infections. Come on, Emmanuel. He's nodding his head. Dr. Emmanuel. It protects our blood and our bones. So God made us physically with boundaries. And the concept of boundaries comes from the very nature of God, which is incredible. He defines himself as a distinct and separate being. And he defines himself telling us what he thinks, how he feels, what he plans, what he allows, and what he doesn't allow, what he likes and what he dislikes. God in himself has boundaries. So let's read Isaiah 59, verses 1 to 2. It says, "Surely the arm of the Lord is not too short to save, nor his ear too dull to hear. But your iniquities have separated you from your God. Your sins have hidden his face from you, that he will not hear." So we see and we know that this describes the wall of sin that separates us from God. So God sets a boundary from sin. He does not like sin, and he cannot even exist, as Luke was preaching today. Darkness and light physically cannot exist with one another. But I have 3 quick points this evening on terms of boundaries. Point 1, erect boundaries. So have boundaries for ourselves. First of all, that in our times with God, when we're coming into the conference. First of all, bringing our worship to the worship conference, instead of thinking I'm going to the conference in order to get stronger, come in strong so that we can serve, like Amelia was sharing. If we're coming in already worshipful, instead of trying to rely on the conference to strengthen us. And we know from Luke 5, verses 15 to 16, despite a very large crowd coming to Jesus, Jesus set a boundary. And he said, no, I need to go pray. There's a lot of needs to be met. And of course, Jesus wanted to meet those needs. But he himself, being God, knew that he needed to go and pray. And he knew he couldn't give what he didn't have. So we need to have that conviction too, that we need to withdraw from the crowd. And for some of the babies, you've probably never been in such a crowd. I think God was very graceful in easing you into a few London services. So it's not like a complete shock. But this is going to be Europe and leaders from around the world. So it's going to be large crowds. But Jesus had the conviction to withdraw, which is incredible. But something I was asking myself, and what I had to learn as a baby disciple, is what is the line between boundaries and selfishness? Because I didn't know how to set boundaries as a baby disciple because I thought it was being selfish. And I thought if I said no to something, that means being selfish. But boundary literally means a line which marks the limit. So what's the line between a boundary and selfishness? It's by asking yourself, what is the motive of me wanting to draw away? Do I want to draw away so that I can get strengthened from God to give? Or do I want to draw away to just get away from the crowd and spend some me time? That's when it becomes selfish. If it's just wanting to be alone time, or if we're having the heart of Jesus, where we withdraw to get strengthened so that we can give. And I'm sure we've heard of the fellowship trap. The fellowship trap gets very real. You're like, okay, I'm going to go back to my room now. 2 hours later, what happened? The fellowship trap is real. We need to set boundaries with the fellowship, sisters. Because if we're not setting boundaries with the fellowships on the way to bed, we're not going to go to bed on time, and then we're going to wake up late, and we're not going to have a great quiet time. So we need to be disciplined the night before. Our times with God come first. However, we still need to let our yes be yes and our no be no. James 5:21, Matthew 5:37. We can passively comply but be inwardly resentful to saying yes to things because our heart's not fully behind it. So we need to make sure if we've agreed to serve, to let that be a yes. And we can't not turn up to something we've agreed to serve because we're having a quiet time. Sorry, I was having my quiet time. You should wake up early, be disciplined with your time with God, have a good night's sleep as best as we can. Obviously, we will not be getting the amount of sleep as we normally would. But giving our whole heart to that which we've agreed to serve to. And be integral women and let our yes be yes. So a few practicals on this point is to plan your mornings the night before. Work out where you're going to pray. There's going to be some amazing prayer spots. Know what you're going to read. And sisters, plan your outfits. As simple as that is, when you're packing, this dress is for Thursday, this dress is for Friday. And then you have to, that doesn't even have to cross your mind in the morning. The sisters know that takes time. Plan your makeup, that even as you're packing, then you don't even have to think about that in the morning. And let our quiet times fuel us. so that we can serve wholeheartedly instead of being an excuse to get away. I can 100% relate. I can get overwhelmed, but let it not be an excuse. Second point, protect boundaries. John 10, verse 11 talks about us being a good shepherd. So let's be good shepherds to one another. If you see a sister, especially baby disciples, if you see she's overwhelmed, encourage her to go and say it's okay to withdraw from the crowd right now and go and pray and spend some time with God. Let's really shepherd one another, especially the bigger sisters, the aunties. Look out for the babies who've never been in this situation before. And last but not least, point 3, respect boundaries. So this is for the leaders. Respecting the boundaries of leaders. It was good. A good example would be when we were all living together, brothers and sisters. And I had to set some boundaries with the sisters. I was like in the middle of getting Finn out the house, and they're like, "Can I ask something?" I'm like, "It's just not a good time," as I'm getting the baby out of the house. You know, we need to set boundaries and knowing when's a good time. Because leaders are humans, in case we didn't know. I don't think some of us fully understand that leaders are actually still humans, and we have certain needs, and we're not superheroes, even though we got to be like superwomen just then in the photo shoot. But leaders aren't necessarily on 24/7 call, but God is. You know the song, "My God's Got a Telephone." God is on 24/7 call, but leaders aren't necessarily. And I think as women, we need to show discipline and wisdom in how we reach out at the appropriate time, especially with the leaders. And just not just for conferences, but in general. We need to learn Ecclesiastes 3, there's a time and place for everything, and really learning tact and grace and good timing, and coming with solutions rather than issues. So I want to tell you a few fellowship guru tips. Who wants to be a fellowship guru? I think it's easy to get a little bit awkward in the fellowship. I have been there. But number 1, respect the flow. Respect the flow. So don't interrupt a leader when they're in the middle of a conversation. I've done that before and it's just awkward. And then I'm like, "I'm sorry, did I interrupt a conversation?" And like, "Well, yes, you did." And it's just awkward. And they could be in the zone trying to help somebody. So try not to interrupt conversations. Imagine your favorite football team, kind of maybe more for, this is for Amy. Imagine your favorite football team, and they're in the mid-center and they're mid-play, and a fan runs up to that football player and they're like just about to shoot. And you're like, "Can I have a hug?" That's interrupting the flow. It's just not the right time. And it's the same in the fellowship, right? A classy move is to wait until they finish their point before jumping in. It's respectful and actually shows the fellowship etiquette. We want to have fellowship etiquette. Proverbs 25, verse 11 says, "A word fitly spoken is like apples of gold in a setting of silver." That's so beautiful. So we need to go after saying the right words at the right time and really master the art of timing, because fellowship really is an art, believe it or not. Number 2, a hug can wait. So we need to show in fellowship, this is what we need to show in fellowship. It can be easy to be eager to have that fellowship hug and wanting to get your needs met by your leader, but remembering that leaders also have many different children and sheep in the flock that they need to tend to. So really remembering there's appropriate time for that personal connection. Waiting our turn shows politeness, respect, and maturity, and knowing the leader to meet their needs as well. And thirdly, leaders need rest too, so let's be a blessing to the leaders. Leaders are there, of course, to serve, to guide, but they also need rest and refreshment. So when approaching them at the right time, be a blessing, not an extra burden. So a classy tip, sometimes the best way to help your leader is by being patient, offering encouragement, and respecting their schedule. You know, knowing a lot of leaders actually have children, and that can be a little bit overwhelming as well. So that really serve them by really knowing that you shouldn't put unnecessary things on their plate and actually wanting to be a blessing to them. So ultimately, the ultimate boundary for leaders as well is to just get your needs met by God. Amen. You know, First Peter 5:7, does it say cast all your anxiety onto your leader? No, cast all your anxiety onto God, because leaders are not God. This is what I had to learn in my marriage. Luke said multiple times, "You cannot cast your anxiety onto me. We are not God." So in becoming a fellowship guru, we need to be strategic and wise about timing, understand that leaders are human, not superheroes, respect the flow, don't interrupt deep conversations for that quick hug, learn the art of fellowship etiquette, by mastering when and how to approach them. It's all about timing, respect, and a little bit of fellowship finesse. So a practical is I'm actually going to share a lesson that our Dad in the Faith from London put together on how to approach your leader. There's a whole Bible study on it, which I was inspired to share today as well. So I'm going to share that on the group chat, and it talks all about grace, timing, and tact. So in conclusion, we cannot compromise our quiet times, and we really need to let that fuel us in order to serve wholeheartedly. Let's be great shepherds to one another and respect the boundaries of leaders by becoming fellowship gurus. Thank you so much.